Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Assembly Elections in India, Battleground States. My name is Pooja Chiprankar, and I'm the Marketing Manager for India at ISI Emerging Markets Group. Today's webinar will be presented by my colleague, Ms. Rohini Sanyal, who is the Research Economist for India. Now in 2021, 4 key states are undergoing elections: West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Assam. These elections will bear testimony to how well these respective governments handled the pandemic and how well their policies have aided economic recovery. In today's webinar, we are going to discuss the socio-economic performance of these 4 states and the possible outcomes of the elections. But before we get started, for some of you who may not be familiar with what we do at ISI Emerging Markets Group, we have been in the business of providing information on emerging markets for over 25 years. We have 2 brands, CEIC Data and EMIS, that specializes in providing high quality emerging market content. CEIC Data provides macroeconomic and industry data on over 200 economies and covers about 7.2 million time series worldwide, while EMIS focuses on providing company, industry, and country research on emerging economies. Currently, EMIS covers 9.3 company profiles globally and about 2.5 million with financials, 1.7 million company profiles for India, and about 50,000 with financials. So with that said, I would now like to quickly introduce our presenter for the session. Rohini Sanyal is our India research economist, and she has been working with ISI Emerging Markets Group since 2019. Rohini has a background in economics and she graduated with a master's in economics from the University of Warwick in the UK. She has 5 years of experience with well-known research institutes in India, such as the National Council of Applied Economic Research, and the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. She has also worked with Bain & Company, which is a well-known management company. I would like to mention a couple of housekeeping points that will help you interact with us during the session. During today's webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. But because there are several attendees on the call, we have placed you all on mute. In order to submit a question, you can do so in writing using the question panel on the GoToWebinar console on the right of your screen. We will try and answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We have also received some questions from you all before the webinar, so thank you for those. We have a handout section just above the question panel where we have uploaded today's presentation file for your easy reference. At the end of the webinar, we have a short survey to capture your feedback and expectations for future events. And with that said, I will hand over to Rohini for the presentation.
Thank you, Pooja. So you who are here, thank you for joining us. We have a very short agenda today. So we're basically going to talk about the election statistics in these 4 key states, and then also discuss some developmental indicators, which will show what really are the people voting for. So let's get started with the first one, Assam elections. Just going alphabetically here. And you can see here from the vote share that how the voting pattern has changed since 2004 to 2019. And here, so I've included both the general assembly elections, the general elections and the assembly elections. So we can compare how the vote shares have moved. And as you can see here, for the assembly elections, the vote share for the national parties actually comes down a little bit, while for the giving more preference to the local parties here. But at the same time, national parties have been very important in these states and for Assam as well. Earlier, before the BJP formed the government in 2016, the NDA alliance that gained majority in 2016, it was completely governed by the Indian National Congress. And in 2021, the BJP is facing quite a bit of competition from 8 combined parties, including the Assam the AGF, the Assam. I'm sorry, I cannot recall the name of the party. So if anyone is interested more, I would be happy to get back on email. So these parties basically have combined against the BJP now, and which in doing so, they have increased their vote share quite substantially. If I consider the latest data, which is the 2019 general election data, and here we can see that the NDA government has 37.6%, and for the UPA government is 47.9%, which makes a win for this UPA government quite strong in the state. If I have a look at the seat share for assembly elections in the past few years, so since 2006, you can see here, as I mentioned, that the Indian National Congress was quite strong, and even in 2011, even gained over. So the BJP actually lowered its seat share in 2011, and then there is a remarkable sort of a jump into 2016, where BJP has almost like more than doubled its seat share from less than 20 to now about 60. And what we are also seeing is like a consolidation of votes from other parties, smaller parties and independents, unrecognized parties. There is a consolidation of votes that is happening, which is making the national parties like BJP gain share. So now Assam has 126 seats in their assembly, and we will soon know what the result is next week. But for now, it is very likely that the UPA-led government will be winning majority in the state. For Assam particularly, there is also one key aspect, which is the NRC, the National Registrar of Citizenship, National Registrar of Citizens, which was started by the BJP back in 2016. I'm sorry, in 2017, I'm not wrong. And this has been a major point for the citizens of the state, because the party is being accused of, differentiating on the grounds of religion. And the 2021 elections will actually be very crucial in that respect, because if the India-led government comes back into power, they would probably go full force on the NRC. So again, that makes it more likely that the UPA will form the government in Assam. Next, we go to Kerala. Now, for Kerala elections, it's vastly different from Assam. Kerala elections are dominated by local parties, and we see that with the two major blocs here, the LDF, the Left Democratic Front, and the United Democratic Front, the UDF. And as you can see here, these are the parties which are included in these two fronts. And this is basically sort of an alliance that is going strong in the state. The LDF has been in power since 2016 assembly. But very interestingly, the United Democratic Front gained quite substantially during the 2019 general elections, especially with their alliance with the Indian National Congress. And you can see how substantially the vote share here has increased. And if this is considered together, then the United Democratic Front has a 32% vote share, which might increase even further if the United Democratic Front comes into power in 2021. So in terms of vote shares, you can see here that the BJP has not been able to make a lot of headway. Rather, as I said, the local parties and now the International Congress is quite a big player. We can see from the seat share here that the CPIM, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, is the major seat holder in the in the assembly, and the other parties, the UDF, the Indian National Congress, and the Muslim League. I beg your pardon for messing up the party names a little bit, because there are so many parties here that are included. So let me just say IUML. The Indian National Congress and the IUML together have not a lot of seats in the 2016 elections, but as I said, in the 2019 general elections, they have made a lot of progress, and that is likely to convert into votes for the United Democratic Front in the 2021 elections. So now going over to the Tamil Nadu elections, again, this is a major, block of difference from the Kerala elections and the Assam elections. Here we have two major parties, which we know as the DMK and the AIADMK. Again, the full names are very hard to pronounce and they're very long, so I am just limiting to the short forms here. If anyone is interested, please reach out to me and I would be happy to share the details. So here we see that the DMK and the INC are now in alliance, and the AIADMK has partnered with the BJP. And if I consider the vote shares from their last election, I have added these up here, and there is 55.6% vote share for DMK INC, while there's a 63.8% vote share for AIADMK and BJP. But again, this is an interesting trend that we are seeing across some states now, that in the local elections, this one party is doing well, which is the AIADMK, which is in power. But when we are considering the general elections, it is the other party which has won the majority in the state. So in 2019 general elections, again, it was the DMK and the INC alliance that won majority in the state, which is the parliamentary elections. And you can see here that the DMK vote share has gone substantially up, along with the INCs as well, from here to here. While that for AIADMK has reduced, and the BJP again is a very small player in the state, but it's also one of it's like a binding factor, the BJP, which has been very crucial for the AIADMK party. The party was undergoing some sort of friction some time back, and the BJP played a very crucial role in keeping the party together. And now it's, of course, their biggest alliance. And it looks very difficult for AIADMK to come back into power, especially in the light of pandemic and everything. There's a strong anti-incumbency, not just in Tamil Nadu, but we're seeing it across other states as well. So it is very likely that the DMK and the INC alliance would come into power in the party, in the state. And even the opinion polls, there is a lot of debate about opinion polls, yes, but if I look at opinion polls, there's also a strong suggestion that the DMK-INC alliance would be gaining majority. With that said, let's come to the last state, which is the West Bengal. Now, West Bengal, again, is a bit different because there are no alliances in West Bengal so far. Just the main party, which is Trinamool Congress, which is the main player in this election against the BJP, and the CPIM, which is the Communist Party of India Marxist. That's also a national party. And if you see here, because there are no alliances, I've actually mentioned the seat share for both the general elections and the assembly elections. And you can see here that the TMC went from less than 50 seats in 2006 to more than like 150 seats in 2011 and even more in 2016. However, now we are seeing again that anti-incumbency in this state as well. So when we look at the general elections, we see that the Trinamool has actually lost seat share from 2014 to 2019, and the BJP has been the largest gainer here, so almost the same seat share as the Trinamool Congress. So this is a very interesting fact here that in West Bengal, the elections are going to be very close. And even though we don't have the results, it's going to be very difficult to predict who will win in the state. Because of the anti-incumbency, there is, of course, a lot of ground for the BJP to come into power. And the party has been, you know, doing rallies and campaigning very aggressively in the state because West Bengal is a very crucial state for the BJP. But at the same time, with the pandemic, the second wave of infections, there could be a turn of events which we don't know, and it is yet to be seen. We will know the results soon, as soon as next week. So these are the 4 key states, and we see here that how the political parties are doing. But what about the underlying developmental indicators? How crucial is that for people to be voting? What is it that the people are voting for? So that brings us to the real GDP for the states. And you see the black line here shows what the average for India is. And we see that Assam did very well for a bit in 2016 when the real GDP increased about 16%. And then it's been quite volatile. On the other hand, the other 3 states, they have been quite, well, more steady than Assam. And here we can see that Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, and even Assam have done better than the national average, which was 4.1 for the previous year. And all these 3 states have actually performed above average. And interestingly, again, Kerala turns out to be a state which performed poorly than the national average, given that the state has a very good history of very well educated, and so it's great. It's very interesting fact that why the real GDP of the state has not performed well. And if I look at public finance here, come to fiscal balance, and we see that all of these states have performed better than the national average. So even though they're all running deficits, and Assam's is a little bit more than West Bengal or Tamil Nadu or Kerala, at the same time, these states are running high deficits. And if it's not translated into something positive, like if the real GDP is not increasing, then there's no point. So if I go back to the real GDP and we see that Kerala is not performing well, but Kerala's fiscal balance is performing better. So in conjunction, the two, I would say that the state has probably performed well. We look at the GST revenue, and again, we see that Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal are doing better than the average for India. So clearly, like, there is some kind of development that's happening across these states. If I look at investment and employment, investment is of course very key to all of these states, and states such as West Bengal have been holding summits to encourage foreign investors, even other investors to invest in this state. Interestingly, again, we see it's Tamil Nadu who has received a huge amount of foreign direct investment, and these numbers are in USD millions, so more than 2,000 more than US dollars 2,000 million. So that's a substantial amount of investment that the state has gotten. And if I look at Assam in that respect, it is almost negligible as compared to that for Tamil Nadu. So clearly there is a lot of room for Assam to, grow in this respect, maybe introduce more industries, better their manufacturing, to attract greater investment in the state. Again, Kerala and West Bengal, not very bad, well, but yes, as compared to Tamil Nadu, it could be better. However, the trend is upwards, and hopefully the foreign direct investment will pick up in these states too. What remains to be seen is, how these things are translating into votes by people. What is it that people are voting for? Again, we'll just come back to that in a bit. Now let's look at something more crucial to the people: labor force participation rate. And here we can see that Assam actually had a fall in their labor force participation rate between December and June 2019, December 2018 and June 2019. And then it picks up again and again goes down in June 2020, obviously because of the pandemic and the lockdown. And we see that trend across all of the states. But overall, if I look, then Tamil Nadu has done pretty well in terms of increasing their labor force participation rate. You can see an upward trend here. And so is West Bengal. There's been a slight fall here in February 2019, but overall it's been good, and it's almost above. It was almost above 40% before it, plunged because of the pandemic. And on the other hand, we see Kerala a bit towards the lower side, yet maybe I would say an upward trajectory for Kerala as well. Better than Assam's, but at the same time, significantly different from West Bengal and Tamil Nadu here. Now, one of the very crucial, things that will probably play a great role in the elections for this year are the COVID infection cases. Now, how did the states handle the COVID pandemic? That is a very key question in handling their health systems, and this will translate directly into votes. So, for example, Assam is very low case fatality rate, and the infections are also very low as compared to the other states. If I look at vaccinations per 1,000 of the population, that is doing 6.5, which is very decent as compared to, like let's say Tamil Nadu is at 7.56. So all these states are doing their vaccination drives, but here, interestingly, we see that Kerala is, even though the number of cases are very high in Kerala, but their vaccinations per 1,000 population is also very high, and it's probably the highest amongst all states. We have to check, but this figure is actually very, very. So Kerala's the pandemic management may or may not have been great, but at least with the vaccinations, they're proceeding forward with a great deal. And the case fatality rate is very low for Kerala, which is again a plus for the current government that's there, the Left Democratic Front. For Assam, we still have to see again. For Assam, the reasons would be probably different because of the NRC, which has been a great stress point for the state. But if I look at the other states now, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal, I see the case fatality rate at 1.2, which is higher than the other states, but Tamil Nadu's infections are also gaining now, as you can see that it's widening. So the same for West Bengal. There is a large number of daily infections and it's gaining. accelerating every day. So it's there is a strong sense of anti-incumbency in these states, but if the pandemic would have been handled well by these states, it could have been a win for the incumbent government. But in light of what is happening right now, it'll be difficult to project a clear win for any of these parties. So now I come to key health indicators. Now that health is gaining so much ground, and we look at something very basic as infant mortality rate, and we see that states have done well and there's a downward trajectory. Kerala's is the lowest. So Kerala is obviously doing very well in terms of health. We have Tamil Nadu, which has also performed very well and brought it down to 20%, 20 per thousand live births. And then we have West Bengal and Assam. Assam is actually strikingly high infant mortality, which is still a very long way to go. So obviously the state needs quite a bit of push in the direction of better health systems. Even for death rate, Assam had the highest and now come down quite substantially in 2018, matching up the other states. And here, interestingly again, maybe Kerala's death rate had spiked in 2016, which it's brought down again. And West Bengal's has turned out to be the lowest in terms of death rate. So these indicators together tell us a story that what is important for which state. And as we can see here, that health has been a very infant mortality rate, as it suggests, has been very good for Kerala, which shows very good health systems. Even the handling of the COVID pandemic and the the vaccinations, at the rate of 20 per thousand population is a strikingly high number, again suggesting very good health systems for the state. And this could actually turn out to be a win for the current party. Just great handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. With that, I come to the end. There were, of course, a lot of more things that we could have included, which is a very short webinar. So that brings me to the question and answers. Over to you, Pooja. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Rohini, for those superb insights. Moving to the question and answer session. I can see some of you have already submitted your questions. Just as a reminder, you can submit your questions on the panel to your right. Now let's start with this question here. Is there any statistical analysis that suggests the GDP growth has correlation with any political party winning the elections? Rohini, over to you.
Yes. Well, there is I don't think there is any research available on this, at least for India, but I can check, of course. However, it is very likely that GDP will have a relationship with the political party, and before we vote for anyone, we are looking at the the election manifesto. Excuse me, and we see what is it that is really important to us. So if, let's say, in West Bengal, Trinamool is saying that we will ensure greater jobs, and if their past record shows that they've made sure jobs are available, then people are going to vote for them because it is what's important. But at the same time, let's say if people think that better infrastructure is more important and the other party is promising better infrastructure and they have a well laid out plan in their manifesto, then people might be voting for infrastructure related growth, right? So eventually what it turns out is, do people have jobs? Is there growth? And how well are these state economies doing? So yes, the ruling political party has a very, very important role to play in the GDP of the state. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rohini. We have another question. CAA, pandemic management, healthcare investment, and foreign investments. Which of these is in top priority in each of these 4 states?
Pooja, could you just repeat CAA, pandemic management?
Healthcare investment and
healthcare investment.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to say across the 4 states. So CAA might be more relevant for Assam, who's undergoing the national, population, the national registrar of citizens, and for them the CAA might be something more crucial than healthcare investment. But let's say for a state like Kerala, healthcare investment might be more interesting or crucial because they're seeing a very large increase in daily infections of COVID. So and the people want a guarantee that they're going to be taken care of. So it differs across states, but I would say that in the present state, the pandemic management will definitely play a large role in determining who to vote for. And the other thing might be actually like employment, because we've been seeing nationally there's been decline, and we saw in the graphs as well that the labor force participation rate has fallen. So in light of the lockdown, the pandemic, people are not finding jobs, and that could be another important, important thing for people to get them to vote for. So yeah, I think that's it from my side.
Got it. Thank you so much. We have another question. How much of an effect the union government policies had on these assembly elections?
I was sort of expecting this one. Very difficult to sort of say that, but we do know that the central government, gave these additional, infrastructure spending boost during the budget to all of the poll-bound states. So clearly somewhere the central ruling party, which is the BJP and the NDA, feels that this kind of development would be appreciated by people in the poll-bound states. And if, let's say, let's take the example of West Bengal. So West Bengal has been promised a substantial amount of infrastructure fund. And if the people think that this is going to be something key for getting their jobs and for the development of the state, and when we see the BJP comes into power, that would give us an idea of, yes, this has had an impact on the voting pattern of the people. So I guess we have to wait till the results come out. But if you ask for my personal opinion, I would say yes, it does play an important role, because this kind of guarantee is exactly what people are looking for.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we are running short of time. We'll take 1 to 2 questions more. There's this question here, Rohini. How
Pooja, you're breaking up a little.
Okay. How will the results of these states be looked at by the major economies of the world?
Very good question. Yes.
That's the next question for you.
I think it is one of the key things the states need to do right now is get a lot of investment, because especially in how the pandemic has left India, is we really need to revive investment, jobs, again coming back to jobs. So how the major economies would see it, it's really up to the states, like if the states go for a party, it depends on what their manifesto is, and if what their focus is going to be on. So let's say if the government is focusing on skill development, and what kind of skill development? Let's say it's forklift operators, and the government is investing in warehouses, and you can have a big logistics player who can invest in the state, to use these services or develop these services, developing supply chain, something like that. So how the major economies see it, I think for the major economies, it's more of a India thing and not really on the state level. But yes, the states do have their own, summits and their own, how do I say, they have their own runs on like getting investment from other economies. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sort of really pinpoint something just at like one thing, but yeah, overall it really depends on who comes into power, and if it seems likely, that uh, uh, a party will come into power who is very focused on infrastructure development, then a lot of the major economies might be investing in that state. When it comes down to investments, you're looking at like maybe state level, investments. Am I okay? I'll give one more example, one last example actually. Let's say, when the Tatas had to, develop which was a big debate in India about Nandigram and the factory that they were going to set up, and eventually I think they ended up setting it in Gujarat. And so this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like it depends, like how the major economies will see and how they will invest. Or I'm guessing the investment is the main question here. So yeah, it depends on the party's agenda. Pooja, back to you.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Rohini. I think we are running short of time. One last question here. Rohini, could you give your own version of autonomy of election conducting constitutional body, ECI, in the just to be concluded 4 states assembly and 1 UT elections?
This has been a big public debate, yes. And of course, there are like accusations against the Election Commission for being biased. But if you're asking me for my personal opinion, I doubt it. I doubt that the Election Commission would be, biased towards a particular party, or I mean, if that's the case, it's very hard to say. Like how do you really? There is no proof of them doing anything. So I don't think that the Election Commission will, the autonomy is being threatened or something like that. So does that answer your question? I'm not sure that answers your question. But yes, my personal opinion is that it doesn't affect. I don't think the parties can impact the autonomy of the ECI.
Well, thank you so much, Rohini. I think this takes us to the end of the question and answer session. Thanks a lot for your wonderful insights, Rohini. We have an announcement to make. Yeah. We are pleased to tell you that we will soon be launching our new proprietary data, India GDP Nowcast. You can stay up to date with the launch either through our website or through social media handles. Rohini, it'll be great if you could throw more light on the India GDP Nowcasting.
Yes. Sorry, I should have changed this. The GDP nowcasting is actually something that we've been working on for the past 6 months, and we're taking this moment here to, just quickly give you a brief about what this project is about. It's basically a real-time estimate of India's GDP growth, because a lot of you might know that we have substantial lags in the release of the GDP data. So it's released usually with a 2-month lag. And what this model does, it basically shows what the GDP forecast, well, nowcast is now, right now. So that's where it's a mix of the words forecast and now. So, and we have, we've selected a set of indicators which will, show what the nowcast is. And it's just been launched today, actually. So you can, all our users can actually have a look on the platform. And for those who are interested, please reach out to us, and I'm sure we can arrange something. So back to you, Pooja.
Thank you so much, Rohini. I think that takes us to the end of today's session. And there are more questions coming in and some very specific ones. So we will relay those to you, Rohini, and we will try and get back to those individuals who asked these questions on email. Now, what Rohini is showing on the screen are some of our flagship publications for those who are not familiar with our offerings. CEIC Snapshot covers macroeconomic overview of major markets, and we are very proud of our proprietary data set, CEIC Leading Indicator, designed by CEIC Insights to predict turning points of economic cycles for key countries. The snapshots are always released within just 12 hours after a crucial release. Then Data Insights cover trending topics on emerging markets, and the thematic reports offer deep analysis on specific countries. Now, for the ISI flagship publications, you can see EMIS provides comprehensive insights and reports on industries and on emerging economies, India being one such. You can also access EMI's industry reports from CDM Next. CEIC reports cover detailed macroeconomic research for key markets. And for the first time in India, we have recently released half-annual updates on key 9 such industries in India, such as insurance, consumer goods and retail, and others. So you could look at our website, ceicdata.com, for more information. And in case you're an existing client, you would have access to these on your CDM Next platform. Thanks again, Rohini, for your excellent presentation. And thanks to all of you for being enthusiastic about today's topic and asking great questions. As I said, we will try and get back to you on those questions which couldn't be covered today. We have a series of webinars planned on specific sectors, macroeconomic topics for various emerging countries such as India, Brazil, China, and so on. And you can visit the link www.ceicdata.com/en/webinar to register for the upcoming ones. Thanks again. As you leave the webinar, you will get a short survey to fill. You can let us know what you thought of today's webinar and any ideas you may have for future topics. Thank you to all of you who attended the webinar. I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your day. Thank you so much.